know what cheese curds, motorcycles, and surf rods have in common? Turns out the best of all come from Wisconsin.
That's right. We're talking the 77-year-old, family-owned American company, St. Croix Rod, where the surf is no part-time business. Offering 41 models across 5 distinct surf series, St. Croix has been designing and handcrafting high-performance, tech-forward surf rods for decades.
Simply put, St. Croix combines the best technology and components with the lengths, powers, and actions demanded by discerning anglers up and down the Striper Coast. All this to say that St. Croix is the premier choice for anglers who demand the best rods on earth. Check out the full lineup at stcroixrods.com.
Beginning in the 1970s as a mail-order catalog, the Surfcaster has long been known as the source for hard-to-find surf fishing gear, and I've been personally shopping with them since the 1980s. They offer honest advice and the best recommendations regardless of your experience level, and will tailor their suggestions to what you actually need.
As you would expect from a business that's been serving the surfcasting community for 50 years, their prices are competitive and delivery is always quick and secure. They want you to have the best possible experience in the surf and have the knowledge and inventory to put the right gear in your hands to make that happen. So check out the Surfcaster at www.thesurfcaster.com, and if you're in the area, stop into their brand new brick and mortar store in Shelton, Connecticut. All right, welcome back to a weekly episode of the Surfcast Podcast. Today we have a bit of a different episode for you to listen to. We're going to have a short interview with Hans Brings. Probably 99.9% of you have no idea who he is, especially outside of New England, but you might, and you might recognize him. And that's because Hans Brings is probably the only person in history in New England to have landed both a tarpon and a tiger shark from the beach. And as soon as we heard about the tiger shark, we were like, all right, we got to get this guy on here because holy cow, you know, one, shame on me, two, shame on you, or however it goes. We're going to flip that around somehow and say like, one is luck and second can't be, or something like that. We'll try to use that. That didn't work at all. Everyone's going, what is he talking about? So it doesn't matter. Anyways, I heard about the tiger shark because I have been sharking myself, and we were out on the beach all set up, and my buddy was like, hey, did you hear there's like a tiger shark caught? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And he said, yeah, it's just happened, I think. And we looked up this story. I think it was in the Cape Cod Times. Maybe we saw it. And yeah, I was like, holy cow, we got to get this guy on. As soon as I realized, like, made the connection because I saw the photo that, holy cow, this is the guy with the tarpon. Now, again, there was another tiger shark just caught last year. There's been other tarpon, like the one in the vineyard. But for someone to catch both is pretty remarkable. So thanks, Hans, for coming on today and answering some of probably what will be our silly questions. We appreciate you on today.
Yeah. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so the one thing I want to ask right at the beginning, and I'm not exactly sure where this is going to go, but when you caught the tarpon and when you caught the tiger shark, was there anything similar about those nights? Was there anything like, oh, this was a standout, or, you know, it was kind of this thing, or was it more just typical?
You know, I'd say they were very, very different.
Okay.
One of the nights I was with a bunch of people earlier in the night, and then as the night continued, less and less until it was just me and one person. And there was a storm coming, and it was very eerie. That was the tarpon night. The tiger shark was more of a normal night, me and some friends having a nice fire, some rods out, and earlier in the night, something hit, and yeah, pretty typical shark night. So they were very different nights.
So the first question I have as a follow-up for that is, do you typically I bet this is what Toby was going to ask. Do you typically like it to be sort of a typical night with like not stormy weather and sort of run-of-the-mill? Or do you get excited about those stormy, sort of eerie conditions?
You know, occasionally the eerie conditions, you know, seem almost mystical, and you never know what can happen. Sometimes you get better luck in obscure conditions, but I'd say typically I try to find, you know, normal signs like a good tide, a more fuller moon, little facts like that sometimes are better than wishing for it to be a little bit more eerie.
So a brighter night you're looking for than
I would say, yeah, something calmer, you know, a little storm doesn't hurt, but I would say calmer is a little easier to fish.
I was just going to ask, is that your thought process? Easier conditions to deal with the waves and keeping the bait in place and things like that?
Absolutely. And traditionally, where I fish on incoming high tides, when I like to go, there is a lot of algae that dies off and sits at the bottom. So sometimes when there's waves and heavy current to mix, the algae is pretty difficult to keep off the lines.
Well, that's interesting. So you like high incoming. That's interesting. Do you specifically target that and sort of go easier on other nights, or are you more of a grind, like I'm going to fish and figure it out?
I guess it depends on how much time I have in the week. Like it is preferable to get those nice high incomings like later in the night, but sometimes it ends up being, maybe mid tide to high or high tide coming down from the tip of high. It really depends on when I end up going, but I would prefer that middle of the night incoming high is it always seems to be the most productive.
Interesting. Um, I'm already getting deeper into the weeds than, no pun intended, that I really wanted to. But when you are going out on a night and the conditions are right, have you sort of developed like a couple of spots that kind of are always productive, or are you scouting ahead of time and looking for a section of beach that has a piece of structure or something like that that you like? You know what I'm saying? Like you're like, this quarter-mile stretch is always the best, or you're like, no, I got to go find this sort of thing.
It's interesting. I'm very lucky that there's a spot that's very convenient to me that also is the most productive in my area. And while that has been my favorite for many years, this year I have been doing a new spot that I haven't actually gone anywhere else from because it's been so good this year.
Oh,
So you said you've been doing this for some time. I mean, how many years have you been doing this, targeting the sharks and the oddities in the surf?
So big sharks from the surf, that's something I've been doing for around 5 years. But as far as surf casting and getting like, smaller dogfish and other smaller species of sharks, I've been doing that since I was very young, probably 6 years old.
Nice.
what is it about the shark fishing that appeals to you? Because obviously being on the Cape, you've got all kinds of options. Like, what is it about the sharking that speaks to you?
So I love surf casting, but surf sharking has a more full appeal for me because I think it's the craziest fight you can get from the beach. And, a lot of people can't even imagine that there's these massive predatory sharks coming so close into the beaches of Nantucket Sound, and being able to catch them and fight with them right in the sand is just something unreal. And I got addicted to it when I first started, and I've been hooked ever since.
That's great. I have to ask because I'm not sure it was in the article or not, in either of them that I've read. It was actually in one of them, but I'm going to ask the question anyways. For your preferred baits for sharks, what do you use? And when you're thinking there's a shot at something special, does it change? So it's kind of a two-part question.
Now, I used to swear by using fish chunks like mackerel and blues. And then I had some buddies that told me, well, eels hold better and you don't have to worry about, crabs and other fish nipping at the bait and taking you off and having to switch baits out. And I have definitely been most productive with eels ever since I started dabbling with them. And as far as what I got the tarpon on, it was actually a night that I was using chunks and not eels. But the night I got the tiger, I was using eels. So it really depends.
It's so crazy. I can't imagine telling Toby and I were talking about this. I can't imagine telling someone from Florida, hey, you want to catch a tarpon? Just use a chunk of bluefish on a steel leader. They would think you're insane. They would think you're absolutely insane.
Well,
Doesn't seem real. I know.
no, it's
I was
great
in
though
Florida recently, and some of the conversations I was having people down there about the methods I use, they just didn't believe me.
so people down like the people from the south have talked to you about it and
For
like,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. I was able to go on spring break in Fort Lauderdale for my senior year of college this past spring.
Hmm.
And I ran into a few people that recognized the story, and we were talking about like different methods up here versus down there, and it's very, very different
Hmm.
what works for me and what works for them there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Jerry was saying, we were talking about like that is just the best part of that tarpon story. That there's that aura of you got to use this and be so perfect for the tarpon and the liveliest bait. And, a chunk of bluefish on a steel leader, you get your tarpon.
It's so unlikely.
So crazy.
Oh man.
So
None
crazy.
of the factors were in my favor there.
Yeah, right. Hey, but it all worked out. I mean, just to have gotten that, like that's such a wild catch. Like, I was thinking about like was gonna ask if there was anything else, any other crazy species. But like, kind of hard to think of anything really wilder up here in New England. So I guess, is there anything, or has there been a night or a session where you're out where you hooked into something that you couldn't stop, you couldn't handle, that just took over, and you to this day don't know what it was? I bet if you added it up, more striped bass were caught from the surf last year on plastic swimmers than any other plug, probably even more than bucktails. The reason is simple. For generations, the plastic swimmer has proven to be a versatile, effective, and affordable fish catching machine.
And that's where the new Hogi OG Swimmer comes in. Unlike most of the other modern swimmers that all look and act alike, the OG Swimmer brings together a traditional design with modern enhancements to offer anglers with a unique and highly effective swimming plug unlike anything else currently on the market. With a unique wobbling action, it moves like an injured baitfish, and it's a large profile, chunky and tubular, and measuring in at 7 inches. Plus, with a downturn line tie, the OG Swimmer stays shallow, making it ideal for surf anglers.
All of this is tied together in an extra hard body that's through wired and decked out with VMC hooks and a hand-tied bucktail teaser. And just like the Hogi needlefish, you won't find a rear hook on this lure, which is better for the fish, better for your hands, and easier on your wallet. This is all part of the Hook One platform, as well as Hogi's new core philosophy, quality for today, conservation for tomorrow. To find out more about this mission, and to pick up one of these premium OG swimmers, be sure to check out www.hogilures.com.
It's funny you say that. Back in 2019, right around when I first got interested in this surf sharking, because I had seen some people going at it in the middle of the night, had no idea what it was, came upon them, and they were catching these massive sharks. I tried it in about, I'd say, August that year. And one of the first nights, I only had Daiwa BG and some ugly stick 12-footer using 30-pound braid, and I hooked something absolutely insane. Now, this fight was crazy for me, but even with the more experienced people that were around me, they had no idea what it was. And after about an hour and a half of crazy runs and what felt like I was moving a fridge off the bottom of the seafloor, I see these massive wings flapping about 40 feet off the beach. And that's when I saw, oh, this must be a roughtail. And I'd heard stories, but I'd never seen one. And unfortunately, I had lots of mung on my leader, and the roughtail was probably at least like 150, 200 pounds. And my hook bent out, and I was not able to land it. But that was probably one of the craziest creatures I've battled with.
They are a fish I feel like every angler should experience once. And once you've experienced it once, you're probably okay to not experience it again, because they are
you
unbelievable.
Probably don't want to replicate that.
They're unbelievable.
Like the best thing you never want to do again, I guess you could say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because there's a lot of anglers assume looking at them that they'll just like suction to the bottom, but they make the most hellacious runs. They just run and run. Right, Hans?
Yes, that is for sure. They can run, and they can also stick down pretty well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that experience, just hooking to something like that powerful so quickly in your, time trying this, did that weigh in on how much you fell in love with it and why you really took to it?
Oh, absolutely. At the time, I was pretty new to even, the idea of catching these brown sharks off the beach. Back then, I thought, Cape Cod, you either get dogfish or you get massive great whites. But it was, around that summer that I first started seeing people go for that kind of middle area. And I was like, wow, that's like the perfect sport.
Yeah.
So yeah, after that night, I was like, oh, I guess I got to get some better gear, some better leaders, better hooks. And then it was the next year that I got my first big brown.
What was that experience like? Talk to us about that.
Oh, that was absolutely breathtaking. I remember it like it was yesterday. We had a little bonfire with a bunch of my friends, and my family was down as well. I hooked it. I had an experienced shark fisherman with me that was able to help me lead it, get it in, and it was awesome. I
Yeah.
was so ecstatic for that moment.
How big was it roughly?
That one was probably 5 feet, but still at the time I was, you know, 15 or 16. So it was very, very special.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Before I ask you about your rigs, because you brought it up. Oh, Toby, you looked like you might have had something. Nothing? Okay.
No, good.
Before I ask you about your rigs, because I do think that's really important for our listeners to hear, you've mentioned August quite a few times. Is August your favorite month, or is it July? Because end of June can be good too. Like, what's your favorite period of time for sharks and then for exotics? I'll let you both.
So, as far as sharks in general, I'd say July has been the most productive month, but I've also had more time maybe to go in July. So it's hard to say what has been the best overall for me, like to truly compare. But in terms of exotics, the Tarpon was the second week of August in 23, and the Tiger was the third week of July this year.
Yeah.
So I guess, within a few week period.
When you got the tiger shark, was it like when you first saw it in the wash? Did you realize what it was? Did it feel different? Did you have any inclination prior to sort of setting eyes on it that it wasn't your run-of-the-mill brown or big dogfish or something like that?
It's funny you say that. So this night in particular, I was fishing off my family's house's back deck. And I know that sounds crazy, but this deck happens to be above a wall that is walkable from the beach. And I set a line out. And initially, when I was looking at the rod tip, it appeared as if I had a massive dogfish because the line was jerking a good amount. The drag wasn't moving a ton, very, very subtly. I could barely hear it, and I was maybe 30 feet away. I ran over and I started getting some line on it, and I thought I lost it originally, but it was heading towards shore. Got some more cranks, and then I felt it load up. And then another one or two times, I thought I maybe lost it because it kept coming in and it didn't feel like a ton of weight. And when I ran down the beach wall, got onto the beach, started getting some more cranks, it was already, I'd say, 40 feet off the beach. And I had a lot of people with me, so there was lots of lights in the water, which I was scared about because I didn't want it moving too much. But when the lights hit it, I saw, okay, the silhouette looks more like a brown, but it was pretty dark. And I thought maybe, it is still pretty far out. I can't exactly see the color. I get some more line on it. It's a good, 15 feet out. I hand the rod off. I jump in the water, start to leader it, pull it up. I see some black stripes, and I'm like, oh, is this possible? And then one of my friends yells tiger, and at that moment, I turn it direct light on the side of the body, and I freak out. I'm like, no way, it's a tiger shark.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would have lost my mind seeing that. Like that's up there. You have tiger shark and like some others, but that is really good. I've never seen one in person, so that would be exciting. And even see it in the surf. So
Amazing.
I've only seen them in aquariums.
yeah,
Yeah, it's absolutely it's amazing. I don't love the idea of them swinging around when I'm trying to swim, but it's a pretty awesome. It's pretty. Amazing.
yeah. They could be ornery for sure. So
Yeah.
I know that next week I was swimming out like beyond the swim buoys around where I am, and I was thinking about it a little bit.
yeah.
For sure.
Something
How
in the
could you
back
not?
of-
I mean,
Yeah.
Oh.
So, as we're getting closer to the end, I want to make sure, because God knows everybody's wondering, what is your typical sharking rig and gear? Like what does that look like? And if you got like some specifics about like what specific kind of hook you like and like your line, we'd love that too. But general or specific, I'll let you decide, because you might want to keep something secret, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
For sure. So Generally, I like to use a rod that's anywhere between 11 and 12 feet, an extra heavy, something that can throw at least 8 ounces. For a reel, I normally use either my Finor offshore 7500, the 9500, or the 10,500. And occasionally I have a Gosa 14K on my lighter setup. And these reels I usually use between 65 and 80 pound as the main line for braid.
Nice.
Leader wise, I typically use 200 to 300 pound top shot Amano, anywhere from 4 to 7 feet, depending on how long the rod is. And for wire, I use 180 pound, which I haywire twist to circles anywhere between a 9/0 and a 12/0. And depending on baits, I am usually using different gauges. Like eels, I'll use a much thinner gauge than if I'm using a chunk. And lately, for my bigger setup, I have a Penn Prevail X Heavy. It is a 12 foot, pretty inexpensive rod, but it's worked for years, so I don't switch it up.
Cool.
And my Finor 10,500 with 80, and with that, I've been using a 6 foot section of 300 mono, the 180 wire, a 2 foot section of the wire, and then also these BKK monster circle hooks, the 10/0s.
Nice.
And they have a little bit of a thicker gauge, and that's been like my, I guess you could say, the monster shark rod.
Nice. Nice.
And you're running weight or just free?
Yes. For weight, I use Sputnik sinkers. I have 4s, 5s, and 6s. And if I do use bigger chunks, I like to put maybe a 4 and a 5 on there just to hold a little bit better. But the Sputniks are great because if I have a longer section of wire, I can just put the hook on top of one of the Sputnik wires and then cast it as one mass. It's a lot easier to cast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. So that was great to get somebody started. And I think the point you've made is also that you don't need crazy expensive stuff to get started in this, right?
No, you do not need anything too crazy. It's good to have a reel with a lot of line, good amount of drag capacity so you can tighten down on bigger ones when you need to. And then also a reliable rod that won't break on you. And one thing to think about is sometimes, your average surf casting rod holders don't hold up and you can lose gear pretty easily. I've had many friends lose setups because a shark hit and they had too tight of drag and they never saw their rod again. So lots of those stories have scared me. So I've kind of stayed in that mid price range for my sharking gear just in case, because I would hate to see combo get lost.
It's funny. Jimmy Fee said that to me too. Jimmy Fee from On the Water. He said you either need to have the very best possible sand spike you can think of, which may still not be enough, or you need to have gear that you're not afraid to lose. And I thought that was really interesting. I'm like, well, I don't have anything I'm not afraid to lose, but I guess I'll go with a really strong rod holder then. So we got the angular aluminum ones that you stomp in, and they're really tough.
Those were great.
Yeah.
Or you can just be really careful with what your strike drag is at. But sometimes even looser drag, when a shark hits pretty hard, there's still enough tension to pull them in.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So when you spike it, you dial the drag back to, in theory, let the line go instead of the whole rig. But yeah.
Yes, so that they can go on as an aggressive run as they want to, and I don't risk losing it. But sometimes, they swim towards the beach on a run, and then in that case, you may not lose your rod, but you may lose the shark because you didn't see any drag movement.
Yeah.
Got it. Is there any other short tips, something you'd like to say to people that you're like, oh, I wish people would stop doing this, or I really want people to know that this helped me? Is there anything like that you can think of for sharking specifically?
I would say keep it simple. Sometimes you can surprise yourself and do really well with gear that may not be the best, or a leader that just is kind of at that base point. And yeah, you can go out as much as possible. Don't try to be too nitty gritty with the days, as long as you can get out there. Sometimes there's more sharks on a a night where there's not a good tide than one when there is a good tide. Sometimes it is random.
Yeah, that's cool.
Interesting.
So when we were talking, you were saying that you do other kinds of fishing as well. And I was wondering if you wanted to just talk about that now as we wrap up the episode.
Yeah, for sure. So while I love surf casting, one of my main types of fishing, which is kind of a niche on the Cape, is jet ski fishing. And that is incredibly fun. Some people are like, well, you can't have that many rods on a ski, you can't go as far. I've proved a lot of those people wrong because I've found ways to kind of get around it. And in the future, my goal is to eventually get a larger shark off the jet ski and get some good footage of it. That's the next battle that I think's worth coming up to.
Cool. That's really cool.
I'd be nervous. I've been on jet skis before for pleasure, and I don't know that I'd want to hook into something too large on it. I would be real scared I'd end up in the drink with them.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, we wish you luck with that. We'll be looking for news of that. If we hear anything about that happening, we'll be making sure to fill in our listeners. And for sure, if we hear about you catching anything else really remarkable, we'll definitely have you back on because we think it's amazing. And we think all of this kind of stuff fascinates Toby and I. We really like the exotics and the whole thing. It's cool. The whole scene is cool. Right, Toby?
Absolutely, yeah. It's as we've talked a bunch of times, we kind of get in the same thing after season after season, outing after outing. So it's good to freshen things up, both in our minds and then what we're doing out there. So I like having these kind of conversations for sure that kind of step away from the norm.
Yeah, I have gotten very lucky with these out of the norm exotic species, and I hope I can continue it summer to summer. So who knows what will happen.
Yeah, and I would say, of course, there's a huge element of luck when you're getting tarpon and tiger shark, but I think that that's really the thing that made my eyebrows go up because I actually think that there's more to it than luck at that point. Because when you're out there every night in the right place with the right bait and you're prepared, because tarpon are notoriously hard to land, even with circle hooks, even by knowledgeable anglers, etc. So luck, yes, but also I think that you're really onto something, and that's why we wanted to make sure we had you on. So thank you so much for your time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Guys tonight.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time out of your week here and meeting with us, and hopefully we'll have you on next time with something else wild that you got.
Hopefully.
This has been a weekly edition of the Surfcast Podcast. You can find out more about the podcast at surfcastpodcast.com, or definitely check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, at the Surfcast Podcast.